Good morning. Welcome to the presentation of your Energy Outlook 2022. My name is Fatih Birol, and I have the honor and pleasure of guiding you through this morning's session. You've noticed it's a little bit chilly in this building, and I think it's quite appropriate. It's a reminder of the energy shock that we've all experienced with the war in Ukraine. It's been a shock, but it's also an incentive to rethink our energy situation, accelerate the journey to renewable energy, and hopefully it's also a turning point. We will be talking about that this morning. The WEO, the World Energy Outlook, is the source of analysis and projections in the energy sector. Looking ahead is what we will be doing. Let me just give you a quick overview of this morning. We'll of course have our keynote speech by Dr. Fatih Birol. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being here with us today. And we'll have a Q&A session afterwards. This will be your chance to ask all the questions you've always wanted to ask Dr. Birol. To kick off this event, I would like to ask on stage the head of the Energy Economics Group and professor of energy economics at the Technical University of Vienna, today's host, Reinhard Haas. Please give him a hearty welcome.
Guten Morgen, good morning, hello. I see many familiar faces. It's a great pleasure for me really to be here today in this full Kuppelsaal, and the greatest pleasure is that we have today Fatih Birol with us. And it's especially a pleasure because I think about 30 years ago, Fatih, we met first when you started your PhD thesis at this university. And at that time, actually, the international exchange was by far less than it is today. And at our group at that time were many, or mainly Austrian guys, and the Austrian guys from different provinces, speaking different dialects. And now I have to switch to German. Und Fatih eines Tages sitzt bei uns in der Runde und stellt fest, ich glaube, ich bin der Einzige, der hier richtig Deutsch spricht. Also in der Zwischenzeit haben wir uns ein bisschen verbessert. We have improved, and we also focus still on energy issues. As you see today, we have an energy conservation issue here. But we also teach, and the teaching content, I would say, have really significantly changed in the last 30 years. Because in the 1990s, renewables was not at the agenda. Today, we have it in different subjects, and especially also at the ACE, the Academy of Continuing Education, we have a course on renewable energy systems, which is famous, I would say, worldwide. We have also projects such as the high office building with plus energy in this area, and we try to go on and continue in these directions. So I would just say, enjoy this morning. Enjoy is maybe the wrong word. I think it will be a hot discussion. It will be a political discussion. And Fatih will guide us as he did. I see it in LinkedIn. You did with Joe Biden, I think, and with Boris Johnson. But Boris Johnson, I think, did not fully understand what you told him. So we have the chance now today to get a better insight, and see you and have a nice morning session.
Thank you, Reinhard Haas. We are happy to have with us today the Vice Chancellor of the Republic of Austria, Werner Kogler. I and we all know that climate protection is one of his big topics. It's one of his concerns. He's a true believer in renewable energy. He's, of course, also a member of the Austrian Green Party. I'd like to thank him for being here today. By doing that, by being here with us, he's underlining the government's willingness to give recognition to renewable energy. Mr. Vice Chancellor, the floor is yours. Please give him a hearty welcome.
Thank you. Vielen Dank. Ich darf gleich ins Deutsche switchen. Jedenfalls ist mein Manuskript in Deutsch. Sehr geehrte Damen und Herren, sehr geehrter Herr Executive Director, ich freue mich tatsächlich sehr, die heutige Veranstaltung zum World Energy Outlook hier an der TU Wien mitzueröffnen und Sie, Herr Birol, als durchaus vertrauten Gast in Wien, 2-, 3-mal durfte ich ja in ganz anderer Funktion, manchmal in gar keiner Funktion, wie Sie wissen, da hinten sitzen. Und es ist insbesondere hier an der TU Wien eine Ehre, Sie begrüßen zu dürfen, mit der Sie ja einige Geschichte verbindet. Und jeder dieser Besuche Ihrerseits in Wien und jede Veranstaltung mit Ihnen bietet immer wieder Anlass für interessante, bereichernde, vielleicht hoffentlich auch mal kontroversielle Diskussionen. Wir sind schon sehr gespannt heute. Und gerade jetzt, apropos Dialekt, in diesen außergewöhnlichen Zeiten, wo Fragen der Energieversorgung so zentral in den Mittelpunkt der politischen, der wirtschaftlichen und der gesellschaftlichen Auseinandersetzung rücken, ist dieser Besuch wieder eine hervorragende Gelegenheit, von den Analysen, den Einschätzungen, den Daten des World Economic Outlooks zu profitieren und Schlussfolgerungen zu diskutieren. Nun, die russische brutale Invasion in der Ukraine, die Verwerfungen an den Energiemärkten, die damit verbundenen dramatischen Energiepreissprünge und letztlich die fossil getriebene Inflation, nicht nur, aber vor allem auch, immer noch die Folgen der Covid-Pandemie, denken wir an die Lieferkettenproblematiken. Das sind alles Probleme, aber stets in unserem Bewusstsein sollte auch bleiben, dass die immer dramatischere und realere Klimakrise sich jetzt auch noch immer wieder des gleichen Spotlights negativer Aufmerksamkeit zu erfreuen hat. Wir dürfen es nicht außer Acht lassen und am Schluss hängen die Dinge ja zusammen, wie wir die Energieversorgung von heute und morgen gestalten, um Dekarbonisierung, eben auch Energiesicherheit und, immer wichtig, Energieunabhängigkeit voranzutreiben. Aber für jeden, der sich mit Fragen von Umwelt und Wirtschaft intensiv beschäftigt hat, ist die Energieversorgung ja nicht erst jetzt im Mittelpunkt. Viele dieser Diskussionen, die derzeit brandaktuell sind, beschäftigen uns seit vielen Jahren. Etwa Europas und speziell auch Österreichs Abhängigkeit von fossilen Energieimporten, speziell aus Russland. Oder die Entwicklung der Treibhausgasemissionen, wie vorher schon angeführt. Der Weg Richtung Energieeffizienz und erneuerbare Energien, die Preisstabilität, die Energiesicherheitsfrage und auch die Frage der CO2-Bepreisung, vice versa der Subventionierung von Energie, wird seit Jahren debattiert und nun sind sie noch einmal dringender denn je. Ich bin froh, dass es uns als Bundesregierung gelungen ist, wichtige Akzente zu setzen, um verstärkt Energieunabhängigkeit, Diversifizierung, auch Einsparung bereits und den Ausbau der Erneuerbaren voranzutreiben. Auch die von der International Energy Agency genannten krisenbedingten Sondergewinne haben wir kürzlich unionskonform mit einer entsprechenden Zufallsgewinnsteuer adressiert. Aber natürlich, es bleibt viel zu tun und es muss immer rascher, immer noch mehr geschehen. Wenige Monate erst ist es her, soweit es Österreich betrifft und wohl die meisten Länder in Europa, dass sich die Frage gestellt hat, es herrschte die große Unsicherheit, wie kommen wir überhaupt durch diesen Winter? Stichwort in Österreich vor allem Gaskrise. Und der Umstand, dass die Situation jetzt stabil ist, wurde durch ehrlicherweise zahlreiche Maßnahmen erreicht. Das war gar nicht immer leicht. Der Gasmarkt ist ja von im Wesentlichen privaten Playern dominiert, hier mit stärkerem Regelwerk und Anreizen hineinzugehen. Es ist aber auch ein Anlass, darüber nachzudenken und innezuhalten, dass das alles immer nur für ein paar Monate in Österreich mit den riesigen Gasspeicherkapazitäten sind viele Monate, es ist aber quasi der relativen Größe dieser Speicherkapazitäten geschuldet, dass wir jetzt mal über diesen Winter kommen, in die Mitte des nächsten Jahres, aber in Wahrheit müssen jetzt die Vorkehrungen schon getroffen werden für die Energiesicherheit, in erster Linie Gassicherheit, vor allem auch für die produzierende Industrie, für den nächsten Winter. Da stehen wir also. Es ist aber kurzfristig pragmatisch, mittelfristig natürlich visionär weiterzuarbeiten, dahingehend, dass die Energiewende gelingt. Das ist völlig klar. Es ist aber schon so, dass die Weichen eben jetzt gestellt werden. Und wenn wir uns absichern müssen, weil wir uns in eine derartige Gasabhängigkeit begeben, darf man natürlich nicht aus dem Auge verlieren, dass gleichzeitig viele Investitionen schon in Richtung Erneuerbare immer stärker und immer mehr umgelenkt werden müssen. Es ist jedenfalls ein Irrglaube anzunehmen, dass in Sachen Energieversorgung und die Dominanz, der bisherigen Dominanz der Fossilen, manchmal hat man ja das treffende Zitat gehört, dass die westlichen oder eigentlich viele Volkswirtschaften an der Drogennadel von Öl hängen. Mittlerweile ist Gas in Österreich dominant. Es ist jedenfalls ein Irrglaube anzunehmen, dass es jemals wieder so wird wie vor dem 24. Februar. Nun, und dazu, um hier vorwärts zu kommen, dienen natürlich die wissenschaftlichen Einschätzungen und Arbeiten, wie sie auch hier an der TU geleistet werden, sind wichtige Grundlagen dieser Debatte natürlich. Und die Berichte der International Energy Agency und allen voran der jährliche World Energy Outlook sind eben wichtige Begleiter und Bezugspunkte eben dieser Auseinandersetzung. Der World Energy Outlook ist auch ein Abbild der Veränderungen, denen die Energieversorgung selbst unterworfen ist natürlich. Das sind technologische Veränderungen, wirtschaftliche, finanzielle, politische und gesellschaftliche Rahmenbedingungen, die hier ständig in Bewegung sind. Und der World Energy Outlook bietet die Chance für einen Blick in die mögliche Zukunft und ist natürlich aber auch Anlass für einen Reality-Check vergangener Szenarien für die Energiemärkte und den Weg zur Erreichung der Klimaziele. Und nicht weiter verwunderlich erfüllen sich diese Szenarien nicht immer. Aktuell ist das ehemals proklamierte Golden Age of Gas wohl in Zweifel zu ziehen. Der Ausbau der Erneuerbaren und insbesondere die Kostenentwicklung der erneuerbaren Energien übertrifft umgekehrt die zurückhaltenden Erwartungen vergangener Einschätzungen. Und wiederum zu optimistisch, meinen viele in diesen Ausblicken, war der Stand und die Fähigkeit der Nuklearenergie, hier massiv relevante Beiträge zu liefern. Jedenfalls, Energieversorgung hat neben den fachlichen und wirtschaftlichen Grundlagen aber immer auch starke politische Komponenten. Das war schon immer klar, aber noch deutlicher als jetzt geht es dann auch nicht, es uns vor Augen zu führen. Es muss uns bewusst sein, es gibt Interessen von Unternehmungen, größeren Unternehmungen, von Verbänden und vor allem auch von Staaten. Das ist zwar länger schon bekannt gewesen, aber so brutal spürbar wie jetzt wohl kaum. Und das ist alles in diesen Diskussionen, die dann anschließend stattfinden, natürlich mitzubedenken. Ja, abschließend, wir leben in massiven Umbruchszeiten. Der Angriffskrieg gegen die Ukraine verdeutlicht das. Und die Entscheidungen, die wir jetzt in dieser kritischen Phase treffen, bestimmen natürlich die Welt von morgen. Und zwar in der näheren als auch in der ferneren Zukunft. Und vieles steht zur Disposition. Und dass damit Risiken verbunden sind, liegt in der Natur von Entscheidungen und unsicheren Zukunftsszenarien. Aber, das scheint mir wichtig, das sollten wir immer wieder beherzigen, sonst wird es ein bisschen noch grimmiger auf der Welt. Es gibt auch Chancen. Es gibt auch Chancen der Gestaltbarkeit. Und man muss halt auch an die Gestaltbarkeit der Welt eine Spur glauben. Und ich nehme an, dass hier viele, die diesen Glauben haben, hier herinnen sitzen und sich beteiligen wollen. Und zwar ein Glauben daran, an die Gestaltbarkeit, dass man was positiv verändern kann. Zukunft muss man ja nicht nur erleiden, wie es manchmal fast schon ausschaut oder sich anhört. Ich würde es eher umdrehen. Zukunft kann man auch leidenschaftlich gestalten. Bezug habend auf unser Thema, die Energiesysteme sind weiterzuentwickeln, krisenfester zu machen und die Ziele der Klimaneutralität sind noch erreichbar. Die rasche Abkehr der Nutzung der Fossilen ist dafür wohl die Voraussetzung. Und ich meine, die Energiewende ist der Schlüssel für alles und die wichtigste Grundlage für diesen gesamten Themenkomplex, der Wirtschaft und Umwelt am stärksten von allen, denke ich, beeinflusst und betrifft. Und in diesem Sinne freue ich mich auf eine interessante Diskussion, auf anregende Beiträge, vielleicht auch kontroversielle, aber jedenfalls und vor allem danke ich den Veranstaltern, es sind ja mehrere, dass sie dieses Event, wenn man so will, wieder organisiert haben. Vielen Dank und viel Erfolg.
Danke, Herr Vizekanzler. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chancellor. Before we get to the presentation and to the actual discussion, this is a good time to present to you, as you have mentioned, there are many, the co-organizers of this meeting. Please welcome for the Austrian chapter of the Club of Rome. Where is he? There he is, President Hannes Swoboda. Welcome. For the World Energy Council Austria President, Michael Strugel. For the Klima und Energiefonds, the Climate and Energy Fund, the Managing Directors Theresia Vogel und Ima Hüberts. For the Ministry of Climate Protection and Energy, Ministerium für Klimaschutz und Energie, Michael Losch. And for the Academy for Continuing Education of the Technical University of Vienna, Sophie Kostin. Ladies and gentlemen, let me briefly introduce Fatih Birol. I think you all know him. He's, of course, the executive director of the IEA, the International Energy Agency. He has led the IEA in its first ever comprehensive modernization program, focusing on opening the doors to major emerging economies and, above all, making the IEA a global hub for clean energy transitions. Fatih Birol has received several international awards. He has been recently named in Time 100, Time magazine's annual list of the world's most influential people, and of course, as we have heard, he has received his PhD in energy economics from the Technical University of Vienna. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Fatih Birol.
Mr. Vice Chancellor, Excellencies, dear colleagues, a very good morning to all of you. It is I make many speeches, many events, but this is a very, very special one for me. As Professor Haas mentioned, exactly about 30 years ago, in this building, I got my PhD from this very distinguished university, and my parents were here, traveled from home to be with me, my late father, my mom, so I cannot forget this 30 years ago, this event, so thank you very much for organizing this event again here. Before I go to the global energy picture and climate change, let me share a personal note and thank to Austrian government. So many of you think that my career started in TU Wien, Laufbahn, but it's not right. My career started in the Naschmarkt. So in order to, when I started to study here, in order to finance my studies, I worked at night in the Naschmarkt as a Gepäcksträger. So the trucks came from different countries at night, and we have downloaded it until 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, and then came to the school to learn, to finance our studies. And then if we were lucky, if I was lucky, there was snow, and cleaning out that snow brought us about 30 shilling at that time, Austrian shillings on top of that. And it was really not sustainable. And at that moment, I got a scholarship from the Austrian government, from ÖAD. So this is the Österreichische Auslandsschuldienst. And that very stipendium, that scholarship, enabled me to study and finish my PhD here. So many thanks to Austrian government. I don't know if the ÖAD is still continuing, but I hope it is continuing. It could give a lot of promising students to prepare themselves for life, for this country and for the world. The second thanks go to the Institute for Energiewissenschaft, where I studied. And I am so happy that I see Professor Birol, who is my doctor father, with whom I had several discussions. Maximum 20% of discussions I understood what he told me because of his very top knowledge of economics and my poor command of economics, and because of his dialect. But I owe him a lot. Thank you very much, Herr Birol. And of course, Professor Haas, here are many good friends, and I was very happy to see my friend and my mentor, Nadir Güler, being with us today. So many thanks to all of you, and this is a wonderful city, and I am very happy to come here. And TU Wien, I have very fond memories, most of them being of course, in Gustavstrasse. So, dear colleagues, from this, let me come to the energy picture. Now, I believe we are in the middle of the first global energy crisis. We have in the past, in the 70s, we have oil crisis, for example, and this is completely different. Our world has never ever witnessed an energy crisis of this depth and of this complexity. It covers almost all energy sources: oil, gas, electricity, all of them. And it is felt across the world. And I have never seen energy and geopolitics so much interwoven as well. In our World Energy Outlook, we look at many aspects, but of course, two aspects I wanted to highlight with you. First, how the countries, which countries are affected from this crisis, in which way, very roughly. And second, we tried to answer the questions: is this crisis going to slow down or accelerate to reach our climate goals, clean energy transitions? So this global energy crisis, of course, as I said, huge. The reason is very simple. Russia, as Mr. Vice Chancellor mentioned, when Russia invaded Ukraine on 24th of February, Russia was the number one energy exporter of the world. We are not talking about any country, the top energy exporter of the world, so the implications was very, very strong. Now, implications for three country groupings I want to talk. One, developing countries, one on Russia, and one on Europe. Now, starting with the developing countries, so when we talk about the impact of the energy crisis, we mainly hear views about Europe, what's happening in Europe, but the bad news, in fact, the worst news is in the developing countries because of very high energy and food prices. Many countries in the developing world are about to fall in a major debt problem which would shake their economies for years to come. From an energy point of view, I can give you one indication how bad the situation is, especially for Africa. Years and years at the IEA, we look at the number of people in the world who have no electricity, who have no access to electricity. And year, it was declining, a very good news. It was declining year, 20 years. For the first time this year, number of people who have no electricity is increasing because people have no financial muscles, affordability to afford to get electricity, to access to electricity, connection to electricity. So developing countries are economically, the very bad news are for them, in fact. This is number one group. Number two, Russia. Dear colleagues, I want to say very clearly, Russia is losing the energy battle by far. Now, many people say Europe was relying on Russia. It's true. We have said many years and warned the governments. But for Russia, Europe meant a lot. As of 24th of February, 55% of Russian oil was exported to Europe, and 75% of the Russian natural gas was exported to Europe. 75%. So Europe was by far the largest client of Russia. A client, which is a very good client, pays the money on time, creates no problem, and everything was in order. And Russia now lost this client. By far it is biggest client, maybe forever. And it will be extremely difficult, if at all possible, replace Europe with other countries in the world. For gas, it is very difficult, and for oil, lots of challenges. Let me give you one challenge. To bring oil with tankers to Europe from Russia takes 5 or 6 days, and to bring with the tankers oil to Asia, major Asian economies, 55, 56 days. Lots of logistical and other challenges. Plus, very important, even maybe more important, Russian oil and gas fields are geologically difficult fields. They need a lot of technological care, and you could provide this care by the international technology service companies, and many of them said, if not all, said goodbye to Russian energy sector. So to keep the Russian production at the same level, leave aside the increase, will be very difficult. So therefore, as we have seen in our show in the World Energy Outlook, Russia role in the global energy markets set to diminish significantly in the next years to come. We are already seeing a few important indicators of that coming along. Third, Europe. What about Europe? Now, Europe is, in my view, as I said several times, from Berlin to Brussels to Paris, where I live, and many, many places, Europe, in my view, is paying the cost of the policies which were not the best, namely relying on one single country in terms of energy, and that single country happens to be a country that has a habit of using energy as a political weapon. Putting this aside, and I hope those countries one day sit after the dust is settled, make a self-critique of their energy policies and related foreign policies. This is another story aside. But today, Europe was very strong, gave a united response to Russia by taking a firm position in terms of defending the human values. Aggression of one single country didn't go without a major answer. So I am thankful to all the European governments, including to you, Mr. Vice Chancellor, and your government, giving this firm response. But how are we going to, it is very good to take this political response, but on the energy side, it is not easy. Decades and decades of reliance on Russian gas and Russian energy cannot be compensated very quickly. We are seeing that this year in Europe may well be still, we may go through this winter without major problems, but next year may be a bit more difficult, which I'm sure we will discuss after my remarks. But what worries me more about Europe is the European industry. European industry's competitiveness vis-à-vis other parts of the world. It is the North America, it is the China, it is others, because European industry was basically based on the concept of having cheap energy or cheaper energy options, and it will not be with us for some time to come. So as a result, Europe will go through some bumpy roads, and I think it is time, in my view, to have a master plan for European industry in the wake of the energy crisis. How are we going to redesign European industry, which is the heart of the European economy and employment, at the same time when we have different energy realities? There is a need for a new European industry master plan. So these are some thoughts about how this energy crisis affect the different parts of the world. Second question, and the second part and the last part of my remarks is to answer the question, are we going to see this energy crisis, which is a very bad thing, of course, it is going to slow or accelerate the clean energy transition? Now, our answer is, it looks like this energy crisis and the responses that the governments are giving are going to accelerate the clean energy transitions. And here, there are two types of responses. One, immediate responses, and one, much more importantly, structural responses. The immediate responses are pushing the clean energy, clean and secure energy options as a solution to the energy crisis. I will give you a couple of very small numbers. Renewables. Dear colleagues, 2022, the great growth in the renewables, especially in Europe, we have never ever seen this before. And in the next 5 years, but this is important, in the next 5 years, the world will add 2,400 gigawatts of renewables, which is equal to what the world had in the last 20 years. So we will build renewables in the next 5 years as much as we built in the last 20 years. And Europe is a key leader here, together with the United States and China. Why it is happening? In Europe, for example, Germany. I was in Germany only a few days ago. The reason, I told the Germans, the reason is we have revised this year's German renewable growth by 30% is because today the key driver, key reason for the renewables growth is energy security. So in the past, we pushed the renewables to keep the climate as it is now for environmental reasons, but now renewables are seeing a solution to our energy security problems very quickly. And German government did excellent work, I should say, by cutting the time for permitting and licensing of renewable projects. And I hope more will come across Europe. So renewables are growing very, very strongly. We have never seen before. And it is not only Europe, it is Europe, China, India, United States. Second, electric cars. I give you one number, 2019, okay? Only 4 cars sold in the world out of 100 cars, so 4% of all the cars sold in the world were electric cars. And 3 years later, today, this 4% share comes close to 15%. Big growth. And with this trend, even there is no acceleration, in 2030, every second car sold in Europe, US, and China, top 3 car markets will be an electric car. So every second car sold in Europe, US, and China will be an electric car. Big transformation there too. Heat pumps. Again, a big growth, heat pumps. And finally, I should say, we have released our energy efficiency numbers. We have seen, again, this year, governments are pouring money, and energy efficiency improvement worldwide is twice faster than it is historical trends, because it was very, very slow. So looking at this immediate response to the crisis we are seeing a clean energy growing very strong. But more important than that, and this is very important, if we have anybody from the industry here, it will be important. Countries, starting with the United States, are coming with huge new laws and some subsidy programs. I don't know if it is heard in this part of the world, but the new climate law called Inflation Reduction Act, putting $400 billion on the table in terms of subsidies for solar, electric cars, battery manufacturing, offshore wind. Huge amount of money, which will be multiplied by the private investments. US is coming very strongly. This Inflation Reduction Act, in my view, is the biggest climate action since 2015 Paris Agreement. Huge implications. It has implications on the climate change, technology, but also it has implications for the other countries who want to push their industry policies. In Europe, we have Repower EU, again a major program, pushing clean energy technologies. In Japan, green transformation of Japan, China, India increased their support. The reason here, and I would like us to understand this reason very well. The reason here is, dear colleagues, it is not driven by the climate concerns in most of these countries. It is driven by countries want to have a pole position, leading position in the next chapter of the industry. Clean manufacturing, clean electrolyzers, the batteries, electric cars, solar panels. They see the countries, the future is there. So therefore, they are putting a lot of subsidies so that they keep the pole position here, and they are the leaders of the next chapter of the clean energy manufacturing. So this is a major driver as well for clean energy. And this competition, hopefully it will be a healthy competition. This competition will help the clean energy technology costs to come down, and their penetration will be much stronger. So, if I have to answer the question, is it going to slow down or accelerate this energy crisis, our journey to clean energy? If I have to put the immediate responses, such as renewables, electric cars, and so on, the governments are giving, plus this new policies put in place, Inflation Reduction Act, Repower EU, Japanese, Chinese, and Indian programs, I can tell you that I am optimistic that the current energy crisis will accelerate our journey to a clean energy transition. So to finish, perhaps before going to your questions, when it comes to the global energy sector, when we look back today, from 10 years from now, for example, I think we will not only remember the year 2022 with bad memories of 24th of February and later, but also it may well be a turning point in the history of energy for a clean and secure energy future. So thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Take a seat here. Thank you for giving us some hope and putting some, or a lot of optimism actually, into your speech here. We'll open up the floor. It's time for you to ask your questions. There is a microphone for you, and there will be 2 microphones in the room for you. There are assistants walking around with microphones. Let me ask you to please identify yourselves with name and affiliation. And I think I've already seen some hands going up. If not, let me ask the first question. Maybe that was... Oh, there is one. Okay.
So, hello, thank you for the presentation. My name is Fatih Birol, and I'm studying environmental engineering at the University of Vienna. So, my question would be, what long-term societal changes would be needed to reduce the energy demand per capita in Europe?
Thank you. I didn't get it. You are studying here?
Yes.
Okay, you made a good choice, first of all, I should tell you.
Thank you.
So I should tell you that the human beings change their behavior through information campaigns in the schools, in television, do this, do that. But it is not, to be honest with you, it is not the main part of the drive of the change. If we cannot leave it only whether or not people have a good heart, they will listen, they have a sympathy for this or that. This is an important part, but in my view, es funktioniert nicht.
Sorry. Here we go.
In my view, it is important to have two types of measures to make the people change their behavior. One, standards and norms, that you have to put some mandatory rules for, I don't know, for efficiency standards, for lighting, for cooling, for heating. This is one. Second, price signals. If people use energy too much more than they need, they should be paying more. So if we can give these two signals, mandatory measures plus price signals, together with the information campaign, I believe in Europe and elsewhere, we will see the energy consumption is reduced. We need especially in Europe, building sector, transportation sector, industry sector, significant energy consumption reduction, improve the energy efficiency. We have a still huge room for improvement. When we talk buildings, only 1% of the buildings in Europe per year is being renovated. There is a huge room when we think about how old the European building stock is. Thank you.
Thank you.
There's a question here. And then we go to the back there.
Thank you very much for the presentation and the presentation of the whole outlook. Mr. Birol, my name is Ilva Konek. I work for World Energy Council Austria. And to me, youth engagement is a very crucial aspect, and I see a lot of young people here, so I think that's a good thing, especially if we think about the global perspective that 50% of the world's population is below the age of 30, which is 4 billion people. And I think we can all agree that youth plays an essential role in the upcoming transformation. And this was also one of the outcomes of the first ever Youth Energiefonds that took place 4 weeks ago in Lisbon. And there was a group of almost 50 people, including myself, and we worked on a position paper on meaningful youth engagement. In the energy sector, we worked on 12 recommendations, and we believe that every organization should engage with young people in energy and beyond, which already leads me to my questions. The first is, how does the International Energy Agency engage with young people, and in particular in the World Energy Outlook? And the other one would be, do you have any advice for young people like me to contribute to positive development in the energy sector? And the last one would be, do you also have, quite luckily we have also representatives from companies here. Do you have any advice for company representatives here in this room on how to engage with young people? Thank you very much.
Okay, 3 questions. First of all, I should say, how do we engage? We have many young colleagues working across the agency. We have a program to get young colleagues to encourage them to come to IEA to work with us, and the World Energy Outlook team has a very good quota, and I think one of the former young World Energy Outlook team members is here. Timur, where are you? So he's here. He worked for the IEA, for the World Energy Outlook team, and he learned a lot, and he became a successful businessman now. In terms of the companies, I think the companies is up to them, but getting young people brings a dimension that they may not have in their daily business as usual. Meetings, their deliberations, they will benefit from them, their dynamism, and when they leave their company, they will be their ambassadors of those companies, and they will have a very important network. Of course, to find a good balance between the young and the rest of the team is important. What advice to give the young people? I can give many advice, but I'm not sure I am the right person to give advice. But one thing I can tell you, maybe just when you choose, when you are in university, where are you going to work? When you make your choice, I would say just follow your heart. I think it always brings, in my view, a good result. But there are many successful business men and women here who can do better as that. But my humble advice is, if you follow your heart, if you do something that you enjoy, you don't work the rest of your life. So this is therefore, this is my suggestion.
Let me just pull up two questions here before we get to the back, because I have a feeling they may be relevant to what we've been talking about. Mr. Struge for the World Energy Council Austria, but not only that, also Verbund, of course, and there were questions here. Let me, yes, please. Just.
Thank you. Fatih, you mentioned that the number of people who do not have access to electricity has increased recently, so this seems to be a turnaround in this development. Can you explain that more in detail? Was it happened here? What is the driver of this recent development? And the second question, when it comes to hydrogen, how do you look at it? What is your evaluation concerning a global hydrogen economy, and particularly how do you look at Europe? What will and can be a role for Europe in this part of the energy economy and hydrogen economy?
So what, as I said, since 20 years, we look at how many people have no electricity, no access to electricity year by year, in entire world, in Africa, India, Asia, Latin America, and it was declining as a result of the, I think, good policies of many countries. But this year, it is just very simple. It is the economic hardship that the people received, and they had no chance, no money to connect to the grid. There was no money for that. It is a very bad. I'm happy that you point out this issue. 20 million people added to the number of people who have no access to electricity, mainly, if not exclusively, in sub-Saharan Africa. It's a major problem. It is the reason I am saying when we talk around about the impact of the energy crisis, Europe is of course very important, but it is that Russia's aggression affected not only European economy but the entire world economy. But it should be better understood, I think. The second question, hydrogen. Of course, huge opportunity, huge engagement around the world, and Europe, if Europe prepares its infrastructure and finds right trade partners and make the investments in the right time. Especially here, I would like to highlight the electrolyzers. electrolyzer is a part of the entire hydrogen chain. That is something like a small or large equipment, which is the key of the entire hydrogen chain. Now, Europe started this hydrogen first, the story, building electrolyzers, but other countries are coming. So Europe should be very careful. I give you one example of the solar PV. Today, more than 90% of the solar PV manufacturing is in China. But I go back 25 years ago. It was Italy, Germany, and Spain who started the solar PV manufacturing in Europe. Europe was the leader. But then, after a while, Europe dropped the ball. China took it over. Today, China is the leader. An electrolyzer may be the same. I mean, energy technology development is like a marathon. Okay? But Europe started the marathon first 10 kilometers, number one, but then China took it over. Nobody remembers in a marathon who finished the first 10 kilometers the first. Everybody remembers who finished the marathon, the entire 42 kilometers the first. So Europe finished the first 10 kilometers and it is passé, it is over. So if Europe wants to be a leader in the hydrogen economy, I think there is a need for electrolyzer manufacturing getting a lot of support from the European countries.
So let's go back there. There were two questions in the very back.
Dr. Birol, thank you for your presentation. So I'm Alexandre Turpin, an Erasmus student coming from France and studying chemistry. So I have a question concerning the inputs of the different scenarios, more precisely on the assumption of the economic growth you make. So why not include a pathway with economic degrowth precisely? Because I saw that in a report from the European Environment Agency that the decoupling of the economic growth and environmental pressure will be highly uncertain.
So you are French, you said, no?
Yes.
Désolé pour hier, so sorry for yesterday. So first of all, I should say against Argentina. So, but it was a good game anyways. So I mean, economic growth, I mean, degrowth is of course an interesting concept, but economic growth itself is not something bad. What kind of economic growth it is important here. And in Europe, first of all, we have to distinguish Europe with, we're talking about Africa. I mean, in Europe, of course, we should have an economic growth which is much more sustainable and driven by clean energy and economic factors. If you say economy shouldn't grow, I believe it is not the right way to approach the problem. Maybe how to approach is economy should grow, but the energy should be growing either in clean energy terms and or in an efficient way. There is, of course, a decoupling of the energy growth and economic growth in Europe, but we can't say for the world because Africa still needs to grow, Latin America still needs to grow, Bangladesh still needs to grow, they need growth, but of course it is important their growth follows a sustainable pattern rather than the pattern that the advanced economies have followed after the Second World War.
Let's go to you. One question here. Microphone is coming. And then there was another question back there, yes. And then since I'm here, yeah.
Mr. Birol, my name is Peter Bauer. I'm also an alumni from this university. I'm running a family business in the fields of products for the whole energy value chain. We are internationally active, not only in Europe. and I'm also Vice President of the Federation of Austrian Industries. So coming back to your remark on competitiveness of European industries going forward. Here I really see, I'm not fearful, but I see really a problem going forward, that we keep jobs within Europe. Sustainable jobs, also jobs who do something good for solving all these problems you mentioned. And as you mentioned, competitiveness is something critical. If you think to other parts of the world, like Asia, but also the United States. And as Europe, especially also as Austria and Germany, we are very much proud of export industries. But to be successful sustainably for exports, it's competitiveness which is relevant. My question is going into the direction of, first of all, do we have enough energy at all in Europe? And it's rather tripling, at least doubling in the next 20, 30 years, the demand. And yes, for this we need energy transition, but I would say also all kind of other energies. So my question would be, how do you see the nuclear industry as being part of the solution within Europe? I'm not specifically talking about Austria, but within Europe. And the second question is, how shall such a master plan for Europe industrialize industry be? Because we do deindustrialize as we speak. It's a silent approach, and of course competitiveness also needs energy security, but also the right energy prices, which will not change in the foreseeable future, at least in the next 5 years. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is a very important point as well. As I said, given the current energy situation, Europe needs a new industry master plan with the government's support. Where are the Europe's mistakes? Where are the Europe's strengths? Where are the Europe's weaknesses? And there should be government support for highlighting the Europe's strengths and helping the European industries. All the European industries will be in difficult time in the next 3-4 years, but especially energy-intensive ones. Petrochemical in industry, iron, steel, cement, and others. And they are also the major employers. Millions of Europeans work there. So think about the following. It is also for the politicians. If the competitiveness of these industries are diminished, if you're not able to employ so many people, if the employment is becoming an issue, then there will be a lot of social and political implications for that. Okay, so from that perspective, I recently, I think 2 weeks ago, I think, I wrote a published article in op-ed in Financial Times, exactly highlighting this issue. Europe needs to review its industry policy because America, China, Japan, they are all pushing their strengths of their industries, giving subsidies to industries to compete with others. And Europe cannot afford to just sit back and wait and go with business as usual. So this is one. For the nuclear, now every country has its choice, but what I'm seeing is that some countries in Europe are changing their policies for nuclear energy. Such, for example, Netherlands, the new government in the Netherlands want to build 2 nuclear power plants in Poland, in the UK, Italy is looking at the SMRs. There is a renewed interest in nuclear in Europe, but in my view, Europe's lasting solutions to this problem will go through energy efficiency, renewables, hydrogen, and without having a dream that we can drop gas from one day to another. We have a huge reliance on natural gas many years. We will reduce it, but we shouldn't think that next year we will not use any gas. I mean, this is a dream that we shouldn't thinking of. We should reduce it. It will go down, but not tomorrow. So therefore, we have to find ways to still have our gas supplies in the next years to come, but with a vision of having a clean, completely clean energy future. Maybe one last word, please. If you forget everything what I said here, please remember one thing: the European industry is facing major challenges. If we don't take the necessary measures now, it can have implications beyond the industry sector, economy, social and political implications.
Thank you. Yes, there's a question in the middle there.
Thanks a lot for
One, two, three,
the hope
okay.
you have given us, Mr. Birol, Hans Huxig from the Austrian Medical Chamber. The hope is one part, who can prevent us from illness, and the second one is saying adieu to burning emissions. In Austria we will gain 2 healthy life years because of diminishing emissions worldwide. 8.8 million people die of burning emissions every year. And I have a sorrow too. Mohammed bin Salman clapped hands with Putin 2019 at the Genoa G20 meeting, and has a very strong interaction with Putin. And President Xi was 3 days in Saudi Arabia recently. What can this mean for our energy policy? Do we have to look out for an oil price shock or anything else?
So thank you very much for your question. This is an important issue. I think like natural gas, we cannot say goodbye to oil tomorrow. We will still lose oil, and our work, World Energy Outlook, shows that there is all the chances that we can reduce the consumption of oil. Electric cars, this is a big game changer. It will be followed electric trucks and others. Now, I completely agree with you that some of the recent decisions of the key oil exporting countries were a bit surprising. At a time when the global energy economy was flirting with recession, while the inflation is very strong across the world, including the developing countries, since the oil prices is a key, if not the most important driver of the inflation numbers, deciding to decrease the oil production was a surprising one for me. And we should definitely reduce our oil consumption for energy security, but also for environmental reasons. And looking at what happened in the last few months, was one colleague just yesterday was telling me that you say the renewables, solar, wind, hydropower, they are not predictable. I said, yes, they are not predictable. If there is no rain, you don't have so much hydropower. If there is no sun, you have to wait. Wind is the same. But they are more predictable than some of those major oil exporters' behavior. I should tell you that.
We have so many questions here. Let me just add a little. First, there's some over here. Admin, let me add just one sentence. When you are given the microphone, you're also given another little device. Just take that and hold on to it, because otherwise your microphone won't work in here. Don't ask me why it is like that. You are the technically, the people who know the technical side of things. I don't, but that's the way it is. Yes, one question here, and then we have 3 questions over there, I think.
Michael Bosch, Climate Action Ministry, and I'm also in the Austrian chapter of the Club of Rome, and I would like, Fatih, being thankful to you for coming here, but to elaborate a little bit more on the hydrogen issue. You responded first that it's about electrolyzers and whether not to make the same mistake as 20 years ago with photovoltaics. But you also said regionally we have a big problem in Africa, in other countries of the world, and in Europe and in the US there's a lot of money and investment. So what about importing hydrogen and partnerships between Europe and regions around Europe, in particular could be Ukraine, could be the North, could be Northern Africa, and that's a global issue and a possibility also to work together between the continents. What do you think about that?
I think hydrogen trade will take off very quickly, and some of the observers may be surprised with this speed. So it is the reason Europe should be active, already contracting some of the trade partners it can be Africa, it can be in Middle East, it can be in different parts of the world. What I am saying is here 2 things we have to pay attention to. One, the cost. The cost of hydrogen, especially in the long-term transportation, should be in line with the economic realities of Europe. This is one. Second, when it comes to Africa, sorry for talking too much about Africa, but this is, I think, a very important story. With Africa, it is important to import African energy to Europe, but Africa needs its energy for itself first. So I wanted to underline this. It is good to, of course, it will bring down some hard currency, this trade, but I think we should put it in a context. But the overall answer is Europe should be active, proactive in terms of being the already establishing trade partners for the hydrogen imports in the future.
Since we have some time constraints, you have to leave at 11:30. I'd suggest we just bundle 3 questions, and please keep your questions short, then we'll get more answers. Okay, there were 2 others in this crowd, yes? Please.
Okay, I'm going to be quick. My name is Helen Braska. I'm affiliated with both the Austrian chapter of the Club of Rome and the World Energy Council, but also founded an NGO, the Verein Energiewende Linz, 2 years ago, with the goal to find out how civil society can contribute in keeping the advantage of the local industry, because that's something you mentioned in your report before. And my question is, which industries in Europe do you see on the forefront of the technologies that we are needing for the energy transition, and in which industries do you see a lack or a substantial lack in terms of, for example, batteries, technology, and stuff like this? Because of course, Linz is taking 10% of Austria's energy consumption almost, so this is a really important topic for the local industry.
Let's take a second question at the same time.
Hello, my name is Armin Graf. I'm also studying environmental engineering here at the university. My question would be, how would you exactly value the role of the United States, also regarding potential re-election of Donald Trump in 2024? Could that have significant changes on the projected trends you just presented?
Okay, 2 totally different questions. Let's answer these.
The second one is more difficult. So, now, let me start with the European industry. I think Europe needs to, in general terms, Europe needs to take the very fact into consideration that the European energy prices in the future might well be higher than its competitors, which means with the energy-intensive industries
there may be a need to give a look whether or not they should be still the heart of European industrial policy. Because energy-intensive industries mean when you get the overall cost of production, the cost of energy is higher than the other parts, the material, the labor, and so on. So maybe Europe may want to shift its attention in the industrial policy more towards a lighter and tomorrow's clean energy technology manufacturing. This may be a very general answer for Europe. Of course, I don't know. I know that Linz is the industrial, how shall I say, driver of Austrian economy, and I think the iron steel is the first Alpine steel there. This is, I think, yeah. This is the new the iron steel technology, including the use of hydrogen, is something that you may need to take account to. The second question, the US, of course, US is the largest economy of the world. If US changes its president, if you get an administration which turns the US position again not to be part of the international climate efforts, this is not a good news for the clean energy technology. Having said that, the law I mentioned to you, the Inflation Reduction Act, and as I said, it is, in my view, the largest, most impactful action on climate change after 2015 Paris Agreement, is a law. You cannot change it. So there are certain things, policies are different, but this is a law. It is embedded in the US system. So if somebody else comes and tries to move the policy focus somewhere else, it is okay, but law will be there. And we hope that the US people make their choices in the right way.
Okay, we have so many questions. Yes, there was a question here, and let's take the two of them together here. Right in the middle, two gentlemen with their hands up. Oh, we have somebody else. Sorry, yes, let's do that first. Sorry, and then the two of you, and then we go over there.
Thank you, and also thank
Short
you.
questions, please.
Yes. My name is Judith Bauer. I'm with the Diplomatic Academy, and I have two questions. The first one is, we're highly optimistic that things will change. Now we know by the...
Can you repeat your question?
What's the question? Why are you optimistic? Or?
Why are you?
Yes, so the UN climate change news said that the measures taken now are insufficient, and I'm wondering what would give anyone a hope that things will change. That's the first question. And the second question is, as I said before, subsequently more European countries reconsider atomic energy. Now, in the light of the possibility of thorium-based nuclear power, do you think we should invest more in research on uranium-233? Thank you.
The first question was, why are you optimistic? Did we understand that right?
Yes.
Why I'm optimistic? Okay. So normally by nature I am not an optimistic man, but I am optimistic because I look at the data. This is the beauty of being at the IEA. You have all the data of the energy world at your fingertips. When I look at the data, how much investment is going in which technology, which country is doing what, I have no reason not to be optimistic. Clean energy is growing very, very strongly. And believe me, people are putting money in clean energy, not because they are clean, because they bring money back. So the investors, they say the investors with a good heart, they want the best of the world. It is good, but I don't buy it so much. The investors go there where they think they will make money. And they are seeing that in many parts of the world, the clean energy options are bringing money in the short and in the longer term. Of course, if we have good governments around the world, we will make the clean energy options much more investable for the investors as well. I understand the investors' point of view. Why should they put their money when they don't get good returns back? So I am optimistic because I see that the as I mentioned, the numbers on the renewables, electric cars, efficiency, heat pumps, they are really very strong that I have not seen many years in my profession. The second is the thorium. Thorium, since long time there is an interest in thorium in many countries, but I would be really careful to expect a big breakthrough sometime very soon. Thank you.
Okay. Two more questions, only two more questions. Unfortunately, there's
Let's give the
in
ladies
back.
the
Yes,
ladies
we'll stick with the young people if you agree.
Young
Okay,
and
there's
ladies.
one. You already have the microphone back there. Yes.
Consulting engineer. I wanted to ask, I do understand the connection between the Ukrainian war and the elevated prices, the energy prices. I don't understand that the prices already rise in August 21, and we had levels in January 22 that are as high as the last 4 months. So the rise is not explainable by the war, just the continuous elevated prices.
Which August? You mean the last August?
21. So
Okay.
last summer we already had the start of the price rally in oil, in gas, in electricity in Europe. So I don't understand this connection. So I see it more that Putin jumped on a running train. First question and very short.
Let's stick to one question.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so you are young but not a lady, so I will still answer your question. The answer is the following. Yes, it is, if you look at the chart, what happened in the last 2 years in energy prices, yes, before the invasion, we have seen the prices to increase slightly, and then big jump on 24th of February and after. But why there was an increase before? Again, because Russia started to reduce the gas exports to Europe by 1/3 at least. And at that time, I think we are very humble at the IEA, but I will put it the humble side. IEA said already, Russia's, much before the war, 3 months before the war, Russia's reduction of gas exports to Europe without any reason may well be an indication of Russia's behavior in the context of Russia-Ukraine tensions. It is in the Financial Times cover page, September, you can find it. We have already detected this, that this was a strategic behavior of reduction of gas exports to Europe. And it was also the reason why the prices started to go up even before the invasion. I have one.
Okay, the last question. Finally, a woman who was like, no, we've had several. That's not true.
Hello, good morning. I'm an alumni. My name is Jennifer, and I've studied under supervision of Professor Haas. My question is focusing more on India. As we all know, India is one of the largest and your agency has signed a strategic partnership framework. My question is, how do you see that positively impacting the transition, especially in the given circumstances that the imports from Russia has been increasing in India recently?
Yes. Now, India made huge achievements, especially Prime Minister Modi's government. We talk about the access to electricity issue. India, in a very short period of time, Indian government made a huge push for bringing electricity to all the villages. Without looking at the cost, benefit, they went frontal and they brought electricity to people. The second, it is not very well known, but India had a program called Ujjwala. Ujjwala program is, for the colleagues who don't know, in many developing countries, I think our medical colleagues mentioned briefly, there is a major medical problem, namely, especially for women and children, they cook meals with primitive cook stoves, with wood, agricultural waste, animal waste, which is a major problem for the respiratory diseases. It is one of the top 3 source of premature deaths in the developing countries. And the Indian government was very quick to make this Ujjwala program, a program that gave free LPG and clean cook stoves to the people. Again, a big success story of India. Another big success story of India is when you go to India, many streets, it's in some parts of better than Europe, all LED lighting. It is LED program, efficiency. And India has, of course, its own diplomacy, its own decisions how to deal with this oil and gas trade, and they are buying Russian oil. And when I look at the press, I see that it is much lower than the world prices and benefits from there. And I can tell you that the IEA and India work very, very closely in many areas. And I am very happy that after I became the head of the International Energy Agency, as you mentioned, I opened the doors of the IEA beyond the rich countries, advanced economies, and India was one of those countries who joined the International Energy Agency family, and we work very closely together. And we are all very lucky that this year India is the chair of the G20, and we are looking forward to see from this G20 there will be still and again a big push for the clean and secure energy future, even though it will be going to take place in a very difficult geopolitical context of our world.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Fatih Birol. Oh, I'm losing my microphone here. I'm so sorry we couldn't get all the questions in. I think next time you have to stay with us for a full hour. All of you, I didn't get my question either, so I'm sorry. Thank you very much for being with us here today. Thank you very much for being such a lively audience despite the chilly surroundings here. And yes, happy travels back to Paris, I would think.
So vielen Dank Österreich. Danke.
Dankeschön.